the way that I love Ratatouille, for example, as a movie.
I was not expecting that. That was the hardest switch up, and I absolutely loved that. I love Ratatouille. I was like, okay, I loved that. Welcome back to Barely Scraping By. I have a great guest on, Tiffany Hugh. We met through a mutual, and our mutual was like, okay, you are going to love Tiffany. You need to speak with her. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And then I went to some bar I'd never been to before in like WeHo, and we had such a good conversation. Yeah. And you shed so much light on this industry and what you do and your experience and making short films and what it's like to stay in it and keep your head in the game and why you're in it. And I just remember leaving that conversation feeling so good, and like I just had the best conversation, and a good connection is like a drug. Like, do you know when you have a good conversation, you're like, ugh.
Yes.
It's so intoxicating to have a good conversation. So, and then we hung out again, and I was just like, I'm just continuing to really like hang out with you, and I wanted you on the podcast because she works at a production company and she's in that side of the industry, and you're working your way up and have had some time to grow and learn like fresh perspectives, and I wanted you to speak on that here. So awesome. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of everything, I wanted you to get into what got you into the industry and what you're doing now, and then we'll get through the slew of questions that I have for you.
Amazing. Well,
of course.
Thank you so much again for having me.
Of course. Thank you for coming.
Of course. Okay, prepared. I love the intro. It was amazing. Also, I don't know if you saw, but the bar that we went to or met at apparently was like voted one of the best bars in the US recently.
Shut up. I had no idea.
I was like, that's the one day I got like a sparkling coconut water there.
And it's a hidden little gym. It's like, what was I don't even remember. The bar next door or something like that?
Yeah, it's like right off Sunset Strip. So not actually. Anyway. So
it's great. I love that spot.
Yeah, it was very fun. But yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this before, but I never was someone who was like, I was born to do this. Like, it wasn't like I was out of the womb and like had this obsession with movies. I think that when I look back, I grew up doing so much dance, so much ballet, and so much music. And I think that was my initial exposure to art as a concept. And I don't think I ever internalized that this idea of art was such a big part of who I was until I got to college, and you know, you're exposed to all of these very academic ideas, which were very interesting, but I always knew that it was never going to be something I wanted to spend all my time on, essentially. So I just got really lucky to go to school in Los Angeles for college and have this external exposure outside of my classes to this huge industry. And I PA'd a lot. I met a bunch of crazy people, and it was really the stereotypical, like, you just kind of run into it and fall into it. So I feel like I have been playing catch up a little bit in terms of like the film history and like all this other knowledge essentially that other people might have. But I find that really energizing to actually be learning actively about it as an adult and having those more informed opinions about it. But yeah, I honestly look at myself as a recent plant in the industry, you know, just the past few years, and I'm really trying to go super hard into it because it in a way feels like I'm late just to the education part of it, but I'm grateful that I have a perspective outside of it too when I'm going into things.
No, I feel the exact same way. Like, I didn't get into film until it was my junior year of college.
Yeah.
And now people have been learning about it since they were a kid, and they're like, this director and this movie and this director and this movie and this history and this came from this, and I'm like, what? Like, I literally just feel like, I'm like, what are you saying? And then it's like it's like kind of like the name 5 songs of your favorite artist, and if you don't know the 5 songs, then you're a poser. Yeah. And I felt like that when I first got in. I'm like, am I a poser? Same. Like, I don't know those films, I don't know those directors, I don't know those technical approaches, like, I don't know any of this, like all the cameras and lights when they're talking about framing. I'm like, I don't know any of that. Yeah. And so when I first started, it was such a feeling of, am I a poser in this industry? But as I continue to go along, I'm like, no, it's a learning curve, and you just have to lean in and realize you're not going to know as much as everyone else around you, but you will someday get there.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the more people I meet at our level and even, you know, higher levels above, I don't think anyone actually knows what's going on. Like, I think a large part of success, at least from what I've observed from my peers, is the mindset of faking it until you make it. Like, confidence in any industry, but I think especially this one, since it's so inherently social as long as you're a confident person, I've found that goes so much farther than being informed about, film history or whatever else. And I think like these relationships that I build with people, the people that I meet are teaching me more than I would have learned in a classroom sitting there. So I think also there shouldn't be as much of a pressure, essentially, to force myself to learn these things. Everything I've learned recently has come so naturally because of all the amazing people I'm, talking to and networking with. But I'm definitely with you on that.
No, exactly. So can you talk about like your career path thus far and where you've worked and where you're currently working?
Yeah, of course. So I did the regular unpaid internships in development sort of bucket. So I've worked at a few different production companies since then, but New Republic Pictures. I worked at Gloria Sanchez Productions briefly. I also actually worked in documentary for a short period as well at Jane Doe Films. And then from there, I thought, one, development is so tedious. It literally takes so long for anything to ever get made. And I think when I was younger, I just didn't have a perspective on why that was happening. I think I just accepted that it was. So I then pivoted to brand marketing for film. So it was a lot of like product placement. I worked at this company called Ben Labs, and it was a really great experience in terms of exposure to production, and I worked a lot with prop masters and set decorators and had an amazing mentor there. But it was just a very contrived, creative part of the industry. I think you're essentially inventing ways to insert your client into this project, and it was really fun originally, but it eventually got to a point where I was like, I don't want to read this like Darren Aronofsky film and find out how to put Frito-Lay in there. Like that just seems crazy to me. So I knew I wanted to pivot. I always knew I wanted to be way more creative than business centered, I guess, for lack of a better word. So my friend sent me this job that I'm currently at Invention Studios. And when I first spoke to my boss, Nikki Weinstock, it felt like I just met just this entity of a person who so understood how creative I wanted to be. And he's exactly the same, just focusing on the actual writing. He was the first person who ever took the time to explain to me why development takes that long and actually justified in a great way why it does.
Why does development take so long?
I think the core of a story is in the writing, and I think you can have millions and millions of dollars and a very talented director and very talented cast, but I think if the story itself just has no heart, essentially, or no actual integrity to it, in my opinion, the whole film falls apart. And I talk specifically about movies because that's just what I like to focus on. In terms of development, we're very detail-oriented. Our approach is essentially asking a lot of questions, asking for the purpose, the real true purpose from the writer of why they're even telling the story. I think that's also just projects I'm attracted to as well, is what kind of universal truth can we say about people around us, despite how different we are. And I think because we try to have that through line, or I try to have that through line at least with projects I'm interested in, it's almost like an emotional investment in this person. I'm essentially trying to say, I think there are different levels of development that take place, but the form that I understand is because we're trying to create art, it's important to get that aspect of it. Not perfect, but at least bring heart into it.
I love that. Emotions are complicated. Humans are complicated. You're not going to get one story down in the first go around. Like, it's so, and then all the opinions that come into it and everything that goes into making a film, like, it makes sense why it does take so long. How has your boss's legacy impacted your career thus far?
Yeah, he's amazing. I think he's always been creative first, which sounds obvious, but I think that some people outside of the industry might be surprised by how some producers aren't creative first. But, you know, he was originally an author before he even worked in the film industry. He understands what it's like to be a writer. I think he also brings a very kind perspective to things. I think a lot of the times when people think about assistant culture, the stereotype is, you know, you're in the mailroom and everyone's so mean to you. I'm very lucky. I've never worked at an agency, so I can't speak to that.
Yeah, you honestly are. You honestly are.
I know. And you are, anyone in that position is a soldier, and you guys are amazing. But I've worked for difficult people before, but he just has such a respectful approach. And I think that just makes me more inclined to seek greatness from that. He is such a prolific producer and writer, and yet at the core of our work, no matter how hard we work, he reminds me that it's never that serious. And I actually think that nonchalant nature, or whatever, indifference, if that even is the correct word to describe it, drives his success a lot. Because I think that we work in a pressure cooker where everyone pretends like every single decision is life-changing, and it's really not. Like, it's not that serious at all. And it's so important for me to remind myself that, just to keep going, just to make it to tomorrow, essentially.
No, exactly. Like, the littlest mistakes you can make, sometimes people make it seem like you just like killed someone.
Yeah,
and literally. I'm like, my God,
it's an email. Like,
my God,
be fine.
Like, chill.
Yeah.
And I'm complaining to my mom. I'm like, blah 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 blah, and she's like, what, Claire? Yeah. Like, you're complaining about what? And I'm like, because I don't know, you just get in that spiral of self-doubt, and you start shitting on yourself of, I forgot to add this, and I forgot to add this person. It's like, okay, any small mistake can be fixed, and it's not that serious.
It really isn't. And my friend brought up recently that the film industry specifically has a really interesting level of learned incompetence the higher up you get as an executive, because you grow so much reliance on your assistant or whoever's below you to do the simplest tasks. And I think that was such a great way for him to explain that to me, where an SVP at a production company is going to have one or two different assistants. An SVP at a tech company might not even have one. I know every industry is different, but I think specifically the culture that we create with assistants is we have this pressure to do everything perfectly and execute perfectly. And yet, if we execute perfectly, we're never going to be anything other than an assistant, you know?
Well said. An amazing assistant, that's where you stay. Like, I've heard that before. Like, if you're an amazing assistant, they want to hire a new person, and that's like where you stay.
Yeah.
Did the reality of working in a high pressure environment live up to the expectations you had before going in?
I think so. I think I also, personality wise, thrive on solving stressful situations. I do think that in my position as assistant to Nikki, he has such a calm demeanor. I like to think that I'm slowly adapting when it comes to really difficult things. I think the most important lesson that I've learned is, if I run into a very stressful issue, it's less about solving it immediately and more about letting it lay for a minute and figuring out what the best angle of approach would be. Because I think I used to feel like I would have to fix something immediately if it went wrong, and he has really shown me that, you know, a day is not going to kill you if it takes you a day to figure out something that maybe had to happen yesterday. It really isn't going to kill you timeline wise, and I think it's just more about how you emotionally approach a situation rather than the time it takes to get there, essentially.
God, working in the agency world, I do love it, but you're really making me think, like, your boss is so crucial to your mental health. It really is. Yeah. Because if your boss is saying things and they learn that way, and that's the only thing that they know, they're going to pass that down to you.
Yeah.
And just hearing you speak, I'm like, I need that. Because I feel like my mind's racing a million miles a second, because I'm under a pressure cooker.
Yes.
And I have so much pressure put on by myself, put on by my environment, put on by the people around me. Like, it's not just being like one thing, but I feel myself when I walk into work, I immediately go into a pressure cooker. And I take it on in my body. I feel it in my shoulders. I feel it in like everywhere. And then when I leave work, and it's like I'm already feeling it kind of build up in me right now in anticipation for tomorrow. So I just feel like the pressure builds up in me, and I didn't even realize how much it was until you were speaking right now, until you brought in a calm presence, until you're speaking about your boss who makes you feel peace and makes you feel calm. I'm like, and then I'm reflecting on myself as you're speaking. I'm like, I don't feel that at all.
Do you feel like that pressure is exclusive to the people above you at the company who have expectations, or do you think that being at a big company has a sort of competitive nature? Like, I just don't really, I work with 3 people. So
interesting. I've never, through all these podcasts, I've never had a question flipped on me. Interesting. In a good way. No, I think that it's a top-down approach. I think because as the industry's changing and numbers are not being met in a lot of different ways across the board, and the money that we were bringing in the past might be different than the money we're bringing in today. And I think that's creating a lot of unstable grounds for a lot of people. And I'm seeing in a lot of companies across the board, people are double desking now. People are cutting overtime now. It's even harder to get a job now. And that's not even happening in the assistant level. That's happening in all levels.
Yeah.
People at the highest level in this industry have been out of work for sometimes 2-3 years. I think the pressure is coming from them down. And especially in a company that's all about numbers, in an agency that's all about numbers, if you're not meeting certain numbers by certain, not quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, that's going to leak all the way down to the assistant. That's going to leak on down to the floaters. So that's below an assistant, the floaters. And that's going to leak on down to the mailroom. That's going to leak on down to the next people that come in. And it's just this ever flowing river of pressure.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it. It's a good company. I feel good, but it's going to be intense.
Yeah.
It'll be very intense. Speaking of that, what elements of your job are less high pressure? It's funny that it got into that. And do you enjoy those aspects more or less?
I actually don't know that I would describe my current job as super high pressure overall. I think there's the perfect amount of pressure to execute on things, but because we're so development heavy, I actually really appreciate the culture that creates. As in, no one is really in a huge rush to make anything work, because I think we're all generally on the same page about making sure the creative aspect is as perfect as possible before it goes out. That's not to say there aren't anomalies of like certain very intense filmmakers who really want to shoot their thing tomorrow. Will always have that. But in general, my favorite part of the job has to be I get to sit down before bed and read the script and type out my 2 pages of notes, because that's just the normal type of development we do, where we go line by line and extract certain, whether it be grammatical errors or themes, just looking at conversations between characters and really digging into it. It makes me feel so energized for the next step. I'm basically saying I don't think that development is high pressure in itself. I think that building relationships with the writers who share this perspective with us makes it all worth it, essentially, where we have these writers who are like-minded, don't feel like they have to rush themselves into an arbitrary timeline, essentially, to make something happen, because we're so much more focused on the actual art of writing. I think it can come off pretentious to say that, but I think there's real importance in making sure the story actually works before you spend millions of dollars to shoot it. And I think we've seen that so many times with some movies coming out where it could have been amazing because it's visually so beautiful, and unfortunately the story itself is just flat.
Why do you think that's happening? Or the story, or why do you think that happens in general, even through all the, like you said, how development is so slow and it takes so much time? Like, why can that story be so beautiful and then fall flat, and then you leave the theater being like, or you leave your couch being like, that didn't satisfy any craving and that didn't do anything for me? Why do you think those films make their ways through the cracks and get on the screens?
I think there's a lot of weird energy right now from what I've experienced just around the market. I think lots of people are focused on bringing, and I quote, Hollywood back financially, because it's such a tough market right now. And I also think that maybe it's a result of the writer's strike, or maybe it was something that was simmering and waiting to happen eventually. I just think that there are people out there who put themselves against these arbitrary timelines that shouldn't exist and really don't have to exist, and are just forcing themselves to meet certain expectations in a rushed way. And I also don't think that everyone in the industry shares this love for development in the same way, which is totally fine because everyone has their own interests and skills. But because my passion is with development, I think it's just the most important thing to focus on. And unfortunately, with the slow market and people trying to figure out how to get content, and I quote, out there, it feels more like a machine than things to honor.
That makes sense. For the people who don't really know what development is, could you explain kind of in the most simplest terms what that really means and what you're doing?
Yeah. So development is just, so it can happen in one of 2 ways. A writer can come to us with an idea and their script, and we'll read the first draft that they send us, and we'll really like it and say, okay, now we're going to go through rounds of notes to make this better, essentially. And that process of notes is development. And, you know, sometimes it takes years. We had 2 movies that we shot in the fall of last year, and one of the scripts my boss had for 5 years, the other script he found on the blacklist like 8 years ago, and he's been developing them for all those years to this stage where we could finally shoot it. Sometimes you get a script that's so good that it probably only needs 2 rounds of notes and that's it. It's kind of just for anyone's pace, but that whole era of refining someone's script, we just call development.
So 8 years of development, that is notes, fixing, and that could be the writer maybe taking 6 months to implement those notes, or 2 months to implement those notes. So that 8 years is just, these are my notes, this is what you're gonna fix, and just going back and forth.
Yeah, and sometimes if we package with a really great lead actor or something, they might have feedback on the script as well for the writer. It just depends on, if they want to produce, how involved they do want to be, but that also can fall into the development sphere.
For all the people who don't know, that's why it takes so long. Like when I was growing up and I'd be watching these interviews of these films and they're like, oh, this took 10 years or this took 5 years. I'm like, what the hell are you doing back there?
Yeah.
That's pre-production. That's even before you start shooting, to put in perspective. That's literally just getting the script where you want it to then now do all the pre-production and production and post and marketing. And then you have to put it out there and then you have to make money. And it's like such an intensive process and such a long process. And there's people in every single role along the way. And it's so interesting because people just narrow into what they want and they're really good at that one thing. Like the people who are really good at lighting or like electric or writers in general. Like it's just so niche, and that's why I love it, because everyone with this niche perspective comes together and builds this community of people, and it's amazing because you can just hone into their expertise and learn. With the potential to grow at your company, how does it affect your work and dedication to your current role?
That's a great question because it's actually something I've been grappling with very recently at High Intensity. I think the big thing that I'm sure any assistant at a production company looking to grow will tell you is they want to find a project to bring in on their own, or like they want to find a writer to bring in and show their boss, hey, this is a great person. My goal right now, internally at least at the company, is to just share really great pitches, whether that's for a talent grid, which is a little less impactful, I would say, versus going out, finding an amazing writer or amazing script, going through the blacklist or whatever other resources I have from my other writer friends, and just bringing in a really great project to the company. Because my focus is so creative heavy, I want to bring in individuals essentially, or creative kindred spirits in a way, to this company to grow with us. And outside of my job, I would say just focusing on making really great short films, working again with my friends who are writer directors that I think are very talented, who kind of go hand in hand with that internal goal of bringing in other writers that I think would be great for the company. But I can only exercise so much of my development muscle in the company, and I really have to put myself out there to learn more about the production aspect and actual on the ground work that's very intense outside of my job. So I love working on short films, whether they're in California or not. I have experience in both. It's very stressful. It's actually more stressful than my job sometimes, which I told my therapist about this morning. So he got the lowdown before you. But it's all
love this double therapy, and now this. It's
great.
Literally,
I'm like, is this just a continuation? But yes, so I really try to seek out great projects outside of work as well, mainly short films, to just save for bandwidth.
What stories do you want to make in your short films, or what stories do you gravitate towards to put in all the energy and take your limited free time and invest yourself in it? Like, what is getting your wheels turning to want to devote your time to something like that?
Yeah, that is my favorite and least favorite question, because it kind of goes to what we spoke about initially, in terms of I didn't grow up with a strong connection to film, so I feel like I'm still growing into my taste in ways and what I like and what I'm trying to create. I know for a fact that I love dark comedies, I love psychological thrillers. Basically, the way that I love Ratatouille, for example, as a movie.
I was not expecting that. That was the hardest switch up, and I absolutely loved that. The way I love Ratatouille, I was like, okay, I loved that. No, please, that gave me everything. That like took me out. The way I love Monsters Inc.
no, but actually, the way I love Monsters Inc. is the same way that I love, like, basically what I'm just trying to say is, you know, whether it's Monsters Inc. or Fargo or There Will Be Blood, you learn so much about just the evil of humanity, basically. And it's at different intensities, but there's a reason I'm drawn to those stories, and it's because it actually says something about society. I might just sound crazy for that.
100% no, you do not. And I completely agree. I have left some Disney Pixar films having the exact same emotional response than I have in some of the most intense films, like There Will Be Blood. Like chills. Chills. Like Inside Out, the first time I saw it, Soul, that movie, Soul. My God, incredible. And then Inside Out 2 came. One of my favorite movies on this planet is Rio.
Oh my God, I haven't seen Rio.
Well, it's amazing. And like, yeah, I'm in the film industry, but it's like, I love animated films. I don't give a shit.
Me too.
Like, I will be there opening day, sitting my ass in that seat and getting the same emotional response that I would in this intense movie. So I'm right there with you. It's like, whatever gives me that feeling like I want to go out and make something when I'm done with the movie.
Exactly.
I'm like, that is the films I gravitate towards. If not even making, I made a flower arrangement, and I was like, got 3 different bouquets, and I was like, this is just my creative vision happening. Yes. And it's right here behind me. That pink one, and the little naked lady. Yeah. Something as simple as that. Like, creating doesn't have to be something on a mass scale. It could be something as simple as, like, I don't know, drawing on a little notebook. Just like getting that out of your body and onto paper, or like seeing it is huge. And it just, and now I derail, but like, point being, you get what I mean.
Exactly. Yes,
so I get what you mean by Ratatouille. It's
Thank you for hearing me out, because the second that left my mouth, I got so insecure, and I was like, does this sound like I'm trying too hard?
No, it sounded like you're being so honest. And I appreciate that. How has your access to various media affected your taste? So we have so much access nowadays. We have all social media platforms, YouTube, all the streaming platforms, all the films we consume. How does everything that you consume like affect what you lean into?
I think in general, it's great for me to try and watch everything that's coming out, essentially. Whether or not I like it, that adds more knowledge, essentially, to what I do and don't want to do. The most interesting thing right now for me that I like to self-study, I guess, in a way, is seeing what kind of stories land on different streamers. Obviously, there's no question that the streamers are taking over and that they all are trying to carve out their different niches. I think people look at Max, for example, for the edgier content, I would say, or the longer form television shows. Netflix gives you bites of everything, and it's very convenient, and they're experimenting with live formats, which is great. Hulu, I don't know. I have Hulu with ads, so I literally don't use it, but
I'm in the same boat. I have my friend's Hulu account, and I'm like, I hate this. Like, if you give me
so much,
it makes me literally take you. If you were at a level 10, I immediately
literally, I'm sick. I just like don't want to wait for it. But that's the problem, is now I'm in a position where I won't watch a show because there are ads. Anyway, that's all a tangent to say, I really love the sort of risks that Max, for example, is taking with their shows. I think they've had by far some of the best original shows on television. Succession, obviously. The White Lotus we can get into. I think in general the concept is great. I think the seasons as they go on are getting a little whatever.
No, I agree.
Okay,
I agree. That's not even a hot take. This season was poo-poo.
Okay, yes, that's essentially what I mean. I think I just seek out edgier shows and movies, and by edgy, I just mean people who are taking risks and doing something very original. When I first heard of Succession, I was like, I'm not going to watch this boring ass show about these rich children who are essentially trying to claw up to the top of their family company or whatever. And it's literally my favorite show of all time now. And I think that's what is really nice about a lot of the stuff I watch, is how do you take a concept so boring and so mundane and make it so interesting? It's kind of the same reason I loved the movie Anatomy of a Fall. I guess she pushed her husband out the window, and that was very interesting.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Yes, but it's the same thing where I'm not interested in legal proceedings, but they make it so interesting somehow. So I guess to answer your question in a very long-winded way, I look for generally boring concepts about life, and I'm more curious about how people try to make it interesting through the characters.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I saw something the other day, and it was like a lot of our life is boring. A lot of our life is not those crazy concerts. We both went to Coachella. We both realized that Lady Gaga was insane. She had me
so good.
The fact
that was a production.
The fact they saw Lady Gaga, Charlie, Green Day, insane DJs, Pully Pon, and the
we
LA
were
Phil.
At all the same shows, and we didn't run into each other.
But a large majority of my life isn't those weekends. A large majority of my life is waking up in the morning, deadbeat, like barely dragging myself out, throwing makeup on, and going into the office, like, or driving home, or like having simple conversations. Like, the Coachellas of my life are few and far between, and a large majority of my life is boring. It's mundane. Totally. It's simple. And so that's what I want to consume as well. I don't want to see the Coachella type movies. Like, I'm talking about an energy.
Sure.
But like, I want to see the TV shows you listed. I want to see something, so just something I can connect to, and something that I can understand, and something that, like, oh my God, okay, like, you're just working in the office and you're trying to get your dad's position. That I don't relate to that, but like the office setting, you know, the power hungry people and the power grabs, like, that makes sense. And one of my favorite TV shows is Sopranos, and a large majority of it is them just at home and hanging out with the family, and the family relationships, and the friend relationships, and the loyalty. Like, there were the moments of the killings and the shootings, but large majority of it is just their life. Yeah,
exactly. It's the fact that watching them go about their boring life is actually more interesting to me than who gets killed in the next episode and how that violence pans out, in my personal opinion. I think that's just my taste, but that's how you know the writing is so good, though. Is it makes you focus on this the boring concepts, essentially.
But that's what this day and age is we're having the hardest time with, is that we think that the Coachella should be our life all the time. We think that we should have those weekends constantly. Like, even me, I get stuck in I'm not doing something crazy. Like, if I'm having a quiet Saturday, I literally feel like I'm like going against the grain. And I should be out there doing God knows what. I'm like, Claire, you need to rest. You need to chill. But because I have it ingrained in my head, I need to have those crazy weekends all the time and those insane memories all the time. But that's not reality. And that's not the way it is. And I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying. Switching beats again. Do you think you fit the classic mold of a producer? What unique aspects do you think you bring to the table that you feel are sometimes overlooked in this industry?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
I know. I was like, we live boring lives. Then I'm like, do you think that you fucking will make it?
Okay. I guess I've always been gravitated toward producing because there's something so versatile about it. You have your hands in every pot, in a way that I think a lot of producers abuse that exposure uninformed. There's a reason for the stereotype about producers being annoying on set or not really knowing what they're talking about. And I think it's because you have so much power and exposure to different departments and what they're doing. You literally oversee the entire production, that it's actually, in my opinion, easier to fail upward into that position than any other position on a set, because I think every other crew position or, you know, talent, you have to have such a hard skill for that. And producing is so inherently social, and so much of what I believe about producing is just about gut instinct. So I guess I don't know that I have an opinion about whether or not I fit into this mold of being a producer. I think that anyone who wants to be a producer, myself included, just needs to have confidence in themselves about instincts, because you don't need a single hard skill to be a producer. That might be controversial to say, I agree. But all you do is talk to people, and all you have to do is listen to what one person is complaining about and figure out how to fix that at the expense of something else. That's literally it. And that's difficult, and I totally get that, but I think it's easy for producers to power trip on that because you don't 100%. Have a hard skill.
No, and that's why I ask you that question, because you have such a quiet confidence about yourself that you bring a certain presence and energy to the table. And I think what I used to think about producers, male, white, in their 40s, loud, wearing a suit,
loud
as hell, the loudest one in the room, saying the least, but saying like literally like talking the most.
Actually,
like the ones who talk the most usually have the least amount to say.
Yes,
learned that on the flight from this dude I flew with, random flight mate.
That's such a good point.
But it's such good. The people who are yapping the most have the least to say, and so like that's what I used to think a producer is. Like that's what I used to think before I got into it, of this kind of Seth Rogen in the studio, like that image. And then I'm meeting these really strong, confident women. I'm like, across the board, all different personalities, but everyone just has a unifying, which is the unifying skill, the ability to connect.
Yes,
that's really it.
Yes, totally.
Like you can learn how to be organized, you can learn how to work on a set, you can learn how to put a movie together, but to connect with someone on a personal level is I think the one skill you do need. Because if Joe Schmo over here and Elizabeth over here are hating on each other, who's gonna go solve that shit?
Yeah,
you.
You're
who's
right.
gonna go figure out the personalities on set? You. And it's like you need to know who to put on set and the reason to have them on set, and do they work together, and will this work? And it's just understanding human emotions and personalities.
Yes, totally. And ironically, not a lot of people in this industry know how to do that, and it's so unfortunate. And I do think that, I'm biased, but our generation would be the ones who are sort of aware of how to grow into that, I like to think, because it's such an emotional job being a producer. It's exactly what you're saying, where you need to get between people. Basically, you're always between people. It's not objects or ideas. It's a people facing job. And I think that it's ironic that I think a big stereotype of producers is that they're very stingy and closed off, because I think the one important thing about being a producer is being accommodating. You just have to convince everyone around you that you're going to help them. Even if you physically cannot help them, I think a good producer knows how to communicate with people in a kind and respectful way and make people feel like their needs are met even when they aren't, essentially. Or even in my job as an assistant to a producer, and I'm not speaking about my boss specifically, but other people we work with, making them feel like they had an idea when it was always yours. But it gives them that emotional gratification to feel like, oh, I came up with this, when instead you're just making them feel important because you couldn't accommodate something else.
100%. A producer to me is just the foundation of a house. Like, you are the starting line. And it's so funny because I'm taking this business of entertainment class, and I just learned after all this time, producers get paid last.
Yes.
And producers get paid last.
And you put in so much work from the minute you're on.
The minute you step on board, that is your baby boy, that is your baby girl, that's your baby. And you have to nurture it till it grows up into a human.
Yeah.
And then you don't get to reap the rewards until you retire, basically, from that.
That's great.
Like, you don't get a lick, but you take all the pressure. You're the one taking out the loans. You're the one figuring out the money. You're the ones figuring out how to get on set. It's like, you are just immense amount of pressure on you. So it's so inspiring for me to hear that your boss is so calm and so intentional with the way he spends his energy. And it's cool that you get to learn from someone like that, because most people can't handle that pressure.
Totally.
Most people crack.
Yeah.
And when you were saying that people can't read human emotion and figure out personalities, why do you think that is?
I think that, one, way too many people are too up their own ass about everything.
Period.
And I think it's actually back to this idea that my boss taught me, where it's honestly not that serious. And I think that's the only way that I've been able to stay emotionally sane. And because I can stay emotionally sane, I can actually come up with solutions to problems instead of being so deep into this stupid industry that I can't even come up with a rational decision about something. It's honestly all about burnout. I used to always feel like everything was so serious. I used to always feel like tomorrow has to be the day I prove a new thing to my boss so he knows that I'll be promoted or whatever. But actually, ever since I've adapted this mindset that things aren't that serious, it has improved my emotional quality of life so much that I actually think I'm better at my job, because I take it more seriously without feeling like I'm killing myself for this, because no one should be. And if you burn yourself out, you're not going to be able to do your job properly. And it's such a basic principle, but I think it's lost on so many people because of that last episode of The Studio, where they genuinely believe that making this big $1 million movie is just as important as pediatric cancer. research.
Exactly. I don't know why I just got chills like that. Like literally just like it, but it's so true. It's so true. And it's lost in the people in the top.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get at. But at the end of every episode, the guest prior has asked a question of you. Oh my God. And this question is, this is a hardy one. Where do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
Oh, great. This is the question I get? I mean, in 10 years, I want to be part of a generation of producers and executives that are actually creative first, essentially. Because I think there's this energy overall that's so money and business focused, which is great to have, and someone has to do that job, and that totally makes sense that it would be this group of people. But I think that the current industry, in my opinion, of what I've observed, is neglecting how successful art can be. And I actually think that part of the reason that the market might not be great right now is actually because it's not valuing good projects in the way that it should, and it's actually ignoring a lot of that work. So that's all to say, I would love to be a very interactive and proactive producer with all of the creatives that I grow with. I want my friends that I'm making now to be my colleagues in 10 years. I want to be working with all of the writers that I've met recently, all of my friends who want to be showrunners. I want to be running with them, and I want to EP their show or whatever, and I want to produce my friends' features, and I just want to be part of a small community of my friends who all want to become different things, writers, directors, also producers, DPs, and just have this community and really grow in a creative direction. I don't need to be this amazing famous person. I really don't want to be. I just want to be happy with what I choose to create with my friends, basically.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful. Like all the work you're putting in now, you want to see it in 10 years. Like all the relationships you're forming, all the people you're meeting along the way, the people you connect with, you want those to be an investment for the future, and you want to see that investment pay off with the community you've built for yourself, and a strong community. And I think that's so beautiful. That's really pretty. Like I find that to be just like a beautiful sunset, because we're investing now, and sometimes people just see it as like a drinks here, and it's like you see it as, no, I want you a part of this journey long term. I want you now, baby. I want you now. That's what it came out as. I want you now, and I want you then. Oh my God, someone write that in a fucking note for me. But you like, it's just sweet. It's very kind. Like you don't see it as like a I use you, use me moment. You see it as like, no, we're a part of this journey together now. And I don't know, I think that was just very pretty. That was a very eloquent way of saying it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But also it's so true. You bring up a good point. I think people look at everything in this industry to be so transactional, and I think it's more just very social, and it's easy to be competitive, but I actually don't think there's a point to being competitive because of how social this industry is. I want my friends to succeed so hard. I don't need them to bring me with them. I just want to see that happen because it's so hard for even one person to succeed. So
yeah, no, I completely agree. And other people's success is your success if you truly believe in it. Like the more goodness you give, the more love you give, like it will always just come back to you. And if you are in this negative mindset and you want to drag them down, that will then affect your soul too. So it's like all this very karmic energy, this karmic, like it's very like what comes around goes around type beat. But with that was a great way of ending it. What would be the question you want to give to the next guest?
Ooh. What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes you ever made that turned out to be a blessing in disguise?
Great question.
Sorry, that's hard, I know.
No, that's a great question. And the next guest is going to love that question. And you really nailed it. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And
this was so fun.
I'm glad. Podcasting is fun. It's fun to have a conversation and get your thoughts out there in like this space. So truly, it means a lot to me. And I know you're sharing what you shared with me on the OG drinks is now shared with you.
This is true. All right. But thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Peace out, my friends. Thank you.
Bye.